96.3 WHUR and HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. Your questions or comments toll free at 855-288-4876. Now, Insight.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Are student athletes getting back in the game too soon after an injury? We've seen a huge movement over the past several years to reduce the risk of re-injury by young people playing organized sports. Students, parents, coaches, even state lawmakers have had a hand in this, but they've not always been successful. Well, joining me to talk about this are Dr. Gerard Gioia. He is Chief of Neuropsychology at Children's National Medical Center, and Coach Lafayette Carter, founder of Student Athletes for Educational Opportunities, also known as SAFIO. If you want to get in on this conversation, talking about young athletes making sure that they don't suffer serious re-injury after the first, on the gridiron, on the basketball court, wherever they may be playing organized sports, give me a call right now. The lines are open at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Outside of the D.C. calling area, give me a call at 855-288-4876, 855-288-4876. Dr. Gioia, Coach Carter, thank you both for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so Coach Carter, first of all, you've seen sports injuries in your career. Why are you speaking out about this? What concerns you?
Well, I represent an organization that I founded called Student Athletes for Educational Opportunities. Our primary mission is to provide educational, career, and health services for young student athletes. Fitting right into our mission, this is a serious health issue. And so we felt compelled to be able to have a platform and bridge the gap in terms of the education and the awareness aspects of students and parents learning more about this injury.
Mm-hmm. Now, usually when we talk about concussions, most people think about football. But a concussion can pretty much happen in any kind of sport where there's a lot of fast movement and running around. Mm-hmm. What kind of injuries have you seen? Have you ever seen a young person suffer a concussion in your coaching career?
Well, not only in my coaching career, I'm a former linebacker for UDC, so I actually used to inflict the pain.
Okay.
So I used to create the concussions. But no, since I've been coaching, I've seen it happen a lot of times, particularly for some reason among females, young female athletes, and soccer players. People think that it's happening more readily on the gridiron, but it's actually happening among young female athletes. And Dr. Gioia, he can give you some more statistical revelations of that information.
And Dr. Gioia, would you agree with that? Are you also seeing this not just among the male student athletes, but with female student athletes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, girls soccer is the number one sport where they sustain concussions. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they're really, you can take soccer, you can take basketball, field hockey, lacrosse, cheerleading actually is a big one as well. Those all are risky sports for girls that may result in concussions.
And that's interesting when you talk about cheerleading too, because the cheerleading of old was just rah rah sis boom ba, but right. Now cheerleading is a serious athletic pursuit.
It's gymnastics in the air. Yeah. I mean, it's actually a beautiful thing to watch, but it has some risks associated with it, and we need to prepare our cheerleading, both coaches and kids, for those safety measures that can prevent and or at least early recognize a concussion.
Can you give me a layman's description of what happens when there is a concussion? Let's take what we see most often mentioned in media, in pop culture, a football concussion. Mm-hmm. What happens to the brain?
So what happens is when two bodies are moving at a force and they collide, the brain is shaken inside the skull. The brain actually has room inside that skull to move. And when it takes too much of a force and shakes too violently, what it does is it stretches and strains the brain matter. As I tell people, the brain is basically the consistency of mayonnaise. So if you think about that and you think about how pliable that is and you put a very strong force, it stretches and strains. And what happens is chemicals are released from the cells of the brain. And it also tends to stretch and strain the electrical cords, what we call axons in the brain. So basically, that brain is rendered less functional because the software system, that electrochemical signal, doesn't operate as effectively. That then produces all the problems that the brain is responsible for, which is your physical functioning, your mental or cognitive functioning, your emotions, your sleep. And so we see the things like headaches and fatigue and memory and concentration problems and irritability and troubles falling asleep and all those kinds of things because the actual software system of that brain is not operating properly.
Are there degrees of concussions?
There are, and we're still trying to understand why and how some individuals may have a relatively milder injury and others seem to take much, much longer to recover. Some of it may relate to how dramatic, how significant that force is. But one of the other things that we're concerned about, particularly with younger kids and with girls, is that the neck, if it is not strong enough, it doesn't support the head, so that when that head gets hit, it's going to move much more significantly. So neck strength can play a role. Also, the blindsided hit, and one of the reasons why in sports that's becoming really important to try to manage, because the blindside hit results in somebody not preparing for the hit and the head moving because that neck is not supported.
Coach, tell me about that. You were saying kind of tongue in cheek. Obviously, you were a football player. You talk to anybody who plays football, whether it's high school football, college football, pro football. We're going to hear from Daryl Haley, WHUR fitness specialist, in just a bit. He played pro football, but you played and you talked about throwing that hit. Have you ever had a concussion?
Well, I played back in the 90s, and the issue of on the college level back in the 90s, and the issue of concussion was not as popular as it is today. Back then, the term was "got your bell rung," or you got dinged. Yeah, you got dinged mentally. But looking back and thinking about the actual hit, I'm quite sure I've had several concussions as a result of those collisions. But it's something that I think is getting more popularity now in terms of a serious health risk factor. I think people will begin to really understand, the seriousness of it. But when I played, I'm quite sure I had several concussions along the way.
When you talk to parents now, well, let me not even talk about the parents. Let me talk about the young people. What do you tell them about the risk of injury? What kind of conversations do you have with them?
Well, that's why the organization, we launched a program called the I Promise campaign. And the core mission of the I Promise campaign, which is now one of our signature programs, is to encourage young athletes to alert their parent, alert their coach, alert the school nurse, alert the trainer that you think you may or may not have had a concussion. Because what we've discovered as we've been visiting and promoting this I Promise campaign, we've been noticing the student athletes, they're silent. They haven't been reporting and letting people know that they may have a concussion. And it's happening more readily within the inner city student athlete because historically that's their only way out is sports. They want to get into college. They don't want to lose their spot. They want to make sure they stay on the playing field. So, we want to ensure that group, along as all student athletes learn, but we particularly want to make sure that the inner city student athlete and parent is more aware and educated about this issue.
I want to talk about that issue too, about keeping your spot and what your goals and dreams may be athletically. We're talking about student athletes, trying to keep them from being injured and re-injured as they play organized sports. Your phone calls are coming up in just a bit. We'll be back in just a moment. This is the Insight segment on WHUR and HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141.
Hey, XM family, I want to let you in on one of the coolest shows to hit the air. They have this guy named Coach as a host, and he's pretty cool and all, but his co-host, well, she's phenomenal. The funniest, most charismatic, most informed person I've ever heard on air, and it seems like she's always right on point. I think her name is, who am I kidding? This is Renee Nash. Join me and my co-host, Jeff Coach Wims, each and every week. He Said, She Said on Sirius XM, Channel 141.
Everybody wants to know what the Hang Suite is.
Man, the Hang Suite's like one of those cool old house parties with all your cool friends.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Mark. You know, like the party that had all the good music.
Right.
From the Isley Brothers to Lettucey. And the party, everybody just sat around and talked about what was going on.
Right.
Music, current affairs. When that monkey came in the room and twisted your aunt's wig to the side. You know what I mean? Well, listen to the Hang Suite weeknights at 8 on Sirius XM Channel 141. And fix your aunt's wig.
A monkey? Okay.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. This is the Insight segment. We're talking about student-athlete injuries. My guests are Dr. Gerald Joya. He is Chief of Neuropsychology at Children's National Medical Center, and Coach Lafayette Carter. He's the founder of Student Athletes for Educational Opportunities. If you want to get in on this conversation, you can give me a call at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810, 855-288-4876. That's 855-288-4876. If you can't get through, call back. We will get to you. Reggie, calling from Richmond, Virginia. Reggie, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Yes, gentlemen. One point, Virginia Tech recently received a $3 million study for helmets. Now, we know about budget cuts in a lot of these inner cities. Unfortunately, most coaches like to trade the helmets off and bring new helmets or refurbish them. And a follow-up to that, we had a young man that died on the practice field during the summer drills from being dehydrated, just like the young man from Minnesota Vikings some years ago that died. Could you talk about that? Because I think that's very serious during the summertime, and I'll hang up and listen.
Reggie, thank you so much. Dr. Joya, he was talking, I guess he's talking about heat stroke.
Right.
But that also affects the brain, does it not?
It does. Dr. Doug Casa runs the Corey Stringer Institute in Connecticut, and that is an area of passion and research for them also, which is to really reduce dehydration. It's not an area of expertise of my own, but certainly they're doing some great work and really emphasizing the need to have, first of all, to manage practices differently, but also to have that bucket of ice water available should an athlete begin to show signs of dehydration.
Before the break, we were talking about responsibility, not only for yourself if you feel hurt, but also for others. Doctor, you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I think what Coach Carter's talking about is so important. First of all, kids take responsibility for themselves, but I also think it's important that teammates take responsibility for their teammates. And one of the things that we obviously do in youth sports is to emphasize teamwork and loyalty to the team. Well, that also includes the health and safety of your teammates. Kids may not always recognize that they are not acting right, but I tell you, a teammate knows when that play is being missed or when something is not right. And they have a responsibility to make sure that they help their friend off the field. We've seen some good examples of that where coaches are now being informed. It's not ratting on your teammate. It's maybe saving their life.
Quintus calling from Northwest D.C. Quintus, thanks for holding on. What's on your mind?
Hi, guys. Excellent conversation and prophetic in the timing. If you give me just a few seconds to give you a bit of backstory.
Just a few. Go ahead.
Moved to the area from the Central Texas area where I actually started a company called Quantum Leap Sports. You can Google it if you want. But we teach the fundamentals of sports to kids because one of the things that we observed was kids attempt to play sports replicated what they see on television and what they think they can do on PlayStation, which is not the way to actually execute a fundamental in a sport. But as a Top Warner coach, one of the biggest things that frustrated me was parents who come out and attempt to coach without being properly trained, and they do some of the same drills that they did when they were in high school, and they're encouraging kids to be tough and be rough, and it increases the chance of the likelihood of injury. I mean,
well, Quintus, thank you so much. I appreciate your point. I'm down on time. I need to take another break, but you do make excellent points. For those of you who are still on the phone, hang on. The Daily Drum will continue on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. Jeff Brown is next with the original Quiet Storm on 96.3 WHUR. Stay with us.
HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. Entertainment and information from Howard University.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about student-athlete injuries. My guests are Dr. Gerard Joya, Chief of Neuropsychology at Children's National Medical Center, and Coach Lafayette Carter, founder of Student Athletes for Educational Opportunities. If you want to get in on this conversation, the lines are open at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Outside of the D.C. calling area, 855-288-4876, 855-288-4876. Coach Carter, Dr. Joya was talking about responsibility, not only responsibility for yourself as a student player, as a student athlete, but also for your teammates. But again, that it's hard to balance that when you're talking about how important competition is, not just for the game that's being played, but for the long-term goals that young person may have for himself or for herself, but also for those wonderful dreams of pro athlete stardom, houses and lands, and all of that stuff. What kinds of conversations have you had with parents about that? Have you ever been in a situation where a student may have been hurt at one point, is healing, and there's a decision about putting him or her in the game? How do you deal with that?
Well, that's an excellent question, because one of the other components of the I Promise campaign is we're targeting fathers. We want to target fathers because they are the individuals within that family structure that is one who is encouraging sports participation, and they actually are living through their child when they played sports, and they know they didn't make it, so they want to make sure that they ensure that their child make it. So we want to target the fathers to make sure that they are totally educated and aware of the seriousness of this injury, because they are really pushing their child back onto the playing field when they shouldn't be back on the playing field.
Is that a hard conversation? Is that some tough stuff sometimes?
It can get really ugly with the father, because they are the one who really express athletic prowess among their child. It's not just boys. It's the female athlete as well.
Yeah, whether it's cheerleading or whatever. You wanted to speak on that, Dr. Joya?
We now have examples of what can happen, though, and what can happen bad for individuals as they're growing up. Now that we've learned about these multiple injuries and something called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is basically this development of these very nasty proteins in the brain that result in dementia, severe depression, and other kinds of chronic health problems. We've seen unfortunate cases of multiple football players who have died, some who've committed suicide and others who, have demented. And the bottom line is we don't want that to happen to our kids. And that's a message that we also need to deliver to the parents. That's not how we want to see our kids, put at risk. And again, it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. The other side of it is that we know that concussions can have a significant effect on kids' school performance. And so their future is not going to just be with the athletics. It's also going to be with how they do academically. And it's really both of those together that we've got to manage, and for parents to know that you're putting those futures at risk if you don't manage this injury right away.
Well, speaking of football, we're now joined by WHUR fitness expert Daryl Haley, who is also a former NFL player, pro ball player. And Daryl, you've had a concussion.
I've had a couple of them, Harold. I've had a couple of them, man. I heard somebody say earlier, they played, linebacker.
Yeah.
They deliver concussions.
Oh, no doubt.
So here's the thing, Harold. He's delivering concussions. I'm an offensive tackle. At some point, we have to collide. But the game is not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. And I think that's the part that parents don't understand. And I think the doctors in the medical field are starting to realize it's not a contact sport. A contact sport would mean I can tackle you, I can put you down. It's a collision first, then you go down. And that's the part that I think is finally starting to be understood.
Tell me about what your first concussion, that first experience with collision.
Oh, it was beautiful, man. I mean, it really was. I was at the University of Utah, and I hit a guy, and at the time I was, I was 6'4", 275. He was approximately the same size. I'm running a 4.6 40. He's running about the same. And the game of football, Harold, is who's going to back down. So I wasn't going to slow down, and neither did he. So when we collided, my helmet split literally right down the middle. Wow. So it became two pieces. Immediately, I knew something was wrong.
How did you know?
Well, one is a huge goose egg on your forehead, and then you get this incredible headache. And then things just kind of go a little black a little bit. But then your vision comes back. And the thing after that is that, you pretty much know something's not right. So you go to the medical team, they do some evaluations. And over a period of time of about a week, then they say, okay, you're all right. But you really don't know if you're all right until you hit somebody again. And then you realize, like, okay, this is not right yet, or it is. Some of the evaluations, they give you a series of numbers, read them frontwards, read them backwards, light sensitivity, things of that nature. You can speak on it better than I can, doctor. But at the end of the day, it's a game that you really want to get involved in, and the game you really want to play. So as a kid, as a parent, your whole goal is to watch your kid perform. So you need to understand that it's not about what he's doing today. It's about the basic fundamentals. He cannot perform until he understands the fundamentals. So quit telling your kids to go out there and hit somebody. Just go out there and be fundamentally sound and enjoy the game.
And that's interesting because Dr. Carter was talking about fundamentals. You were talking about fundamentals. And we had a caller who was also talking about fundamentals. Doctor, when you listen to Daryl talk about what happened from a medical professional's point of view, what are you hearing as far as what happened to him?
Yeah, so what Daryl's talking about is how that brain's, again, that software system no longer works properly. So his eyesight is not getting the message, and so it goes black. His brain is actually being irritated in such a way that it produces a headache. The fuzziness that you start to feel. All those things that are affected because that brain's electronic system doesn't work.
How are children different, teenagers, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, different from a college guy getting ready to go to the pros as Daryl was? What are the risks?
Well, there's a couple of fundamental differences. First of all, we think the brains and their tolerance for those forces are different. And in fact, we think that they're more sensitive to those forces than in the older, more mature brain. But the second issue, as I said, is that neck that supports that head. The more movement of the head, the more likely that concussion and that blow is going to be transmitted to the brain. So younger kids' necks are not as strong, and their brains may not be able to take that force, so that puts them at greater risk.
Let me go back to the phone lines, 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810, outside of the D.C. calling area, 855-288-4876. That's 855-288-4876. Will calling from Laurel. Hey, Will, what's going on? What's on your mind?
Hey, Hal, how you doing, doctor? Hey, Hal, when Daryl first started talking, remember he said he was 6'4".
My spinal cord has been compressed.
He's about 5'2" right now. Hey, this is my question. The doctor just answered one when he said about the age differences. But I've always wondered. I've been watching the game football for about 40 years, and I've always wondered the guy that puts the hit. One guy gets a concussion. The guy that throws the hit never gets a concussion. And I'm wondering, does his psychologically preparedness keep him from getting this thing? How does that work?
Yeah, it's actually his physical preparedness. So again, that's why the blindside hit produces more of these injuries. But the person that's getting hit, and it really varies from position to position, because even I mean, if the force is great enough, you can be all prepared that you want. I mean, as you were barreling down on the other 6'4" guy, 275 pounds, you knew you were going to get hit, but it's still the amount of force that happened, couldn't stop it. When you are not prepared, though, that's when you have an issue. The tackler oftentimes knows when they're going to be hitting or delivering that hit. The person that's tackled may or may not see that coming, and so they may be a little bit more at risk.
Thank you so much, Will, for your phone call. Kelvin, calling from Upper Marlboro. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Good evening, gentlemen. I'd like to say hello to Lafayette Connor.
One of my teammates. What's up, son?
How you doing there, Coach?
What up?
I coach high school ball at Bishop McNamara High School in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and I think you gentlemen are hitting a very good point with describing how to be proactive with this, because I also have a young son, and I felt a little fearful about him playing football.
You're a coach.
As a coach, believe it or not, and football is my passion, but hearing this is giving me a lot more knowledge and a lot more insight to understand that it goes back to the fundamentals, educating our kids as well as the parents. And I think football, my wife had said that, football is something that every little boy should play, at least once, experience it. And if they don't like it, then fine. Don't force them to do it, but it builds up their character, it makes them a little tough. And I agree with all of that. But seeing the injuries, having witnessed concussions, having talked to kids and helped kids off of the field that have suffered concussions, I mean, it's a very, very serious matter. And as a coach, that's one of the things that I try to make sure that we're educating our kids, even our kids, that play in the huddles. I'll tell my quarterbacks, look in your guys' eyes, when you're giving them the play. As I send it into you, make sure you're looking around the huddle and you're looking into each helmet. And if somebody looks a little spacey or they're looking off or, call the timeout, things of that nature. But I believe educating our kids and making everyone aware of the situation and trying to be as proactive as possible is one of the solutions in this situation.
Kelvin, let me ask you real quick, because talking to the kids sounds like the easy part, but when you're talking to parents, and I mentioned this to Coach Carter earlier today in this conversation, how difficult is it dealing with parents who are, shall I say, enthusiastic about their children's playing in a particular sport? Are they troublesome? Do they understand? Is it the depending on the weather that determines how they react to how you may lay down the law?
That's a good point. It varies from parent to parent and their knowledge and their experience. I think as a broad, we have to continue to educate. We have to continue to inform and have these type of conversations and these type of forums that are out there. We don't want people to be fearful of the sport of football. As Mr. Haley said, it's a collision sport. I mean, I played since I was 8 years old until I was about 23 years old. And that it is. It's a collision sport. And you have to understand the nature of the sport and what it brings. So with the parents, I mean, just continuous education of that and allowing them to see firsthand, what we do, how the kids are being taught, what we're showing them fundamentally, and as well as, them seeing some of the side effects. I mean, they have to know and understand that, hey, these are some of the possibilities. These are some of the things if you don't use proper technique. These are some of the things if your kid isn't coached and taught properly, how to do something. And then the mere fact that accidents do happen. There are those freakish accidents that do happen with sport. From concussion on down to, broken limbs and ligaments and things of that nature.
Well,
but I think that the continued education of that, and just hopefully that parents, won't be overzealous and so enthusiastic that they lose sight of this is a child, this is a young man or a young woman even,
Well,
and
Kelvin,
they come first.
well, thank you so much. I appreciate your input. So glad that you called, giving us something to think about. And Daryl, you were just kind of shaking your head. You said you don't believe that every kid should play football. Why not?
Absolutely not.
I mean, every boy.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Let me back up because now we got girls playing.
That's true. That's true.
I'm smacking my hand. I'm getting it politically correct. Go ahead.
Football is a sport of passion. Mm-hmm. It's not a sport where your mother or your father says, "I think you should go out and play." It only takes one play. If your kid is not prepared to play on that one play because he's not mentally into the game or physically want to be on the field, there's another kid who is a predator, who is looking to really hit. So parents, it only takes one play. So if your kid does not want to play football, let them go play soccer, let them go play the cello, let them go do whatever that they're passionate about, but do not make them go get on the football field.
Interesting. Excellent
No,
point.
and I want to make
I need to take a break. You can hold on to your point, and we'll come back to it. If you want to get in on this conversation, you can give me a call at 202-319-7810 or 855-288-4876. When we come back, Mark and Daryl will take your calls. This is the Insight segment on HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141.
Hi, I'm Ray Baker, host of Real Talk. Join me every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as I sit down and have the important conversations that you want to hear. On Real Talk, we interview everyone from politicians to athletes, artists, entertainers, and newsmakers of all walks of life. We have the vital conversation that'll engage, enlighten, entertain, but most importantly, educate. That's Real Talk with Ray Baker, HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141, Mondays, 2 p.m. Eastern. See you there.
It's hot. It's blazing. It's heating things up. It's Urban Heat. A hot 1 hour music show that features the hottest music played anywhere on radio. Plus, your favorite music stars will be checking in like Jill Scott, Anthony Hamilton, Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, Eric Roberson, Johnny Gill, Angie Stone, Mint Condition, and more. So don't miss the heat. Urban Heat on Sirius XM 141, HUR Voices.
Okay, check it out. If you're looking for something different,
something unique,
then join me, Bobby Gales, for the Weekend Review on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. We'll count down the top 10 songs across the country, and I'll even throw a flashback song in there that'll bring back, hopefully, some good memories for you. We also have the world-famous mini concert featuring some of
your
favorite artists. So tune in to the Weekend Review.
The Weekend Review
on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141.
Habitat for Humanity builds homes and so much more. A Habitat build site is where setting a brick can build a community, where digging a foundation can fill a family with hope, where driving a nail can secure an education, where building a wall breaks down barriers, where hanging a door opens a world of opportunity. Habitat for Humanity builds houses and so much more. What will you build? Visit habitat.org to learn more.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about student-athlete injuries. My guests are Dr. Gerard Joya, Chief of Neuropsychology at Children's National Medical Center, Coach Lafayette Carter, founder of Student Athletes for Educational Opportunities, and former NFL football player and WHUR fitness expert Daryl Haley. Coach Carter, before the break, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, I definitely agree on one aspect of what Coach K, the previous caller, was making, and that's education. That's why with our I Promise campaign, we partner with people like Dr. Joya, the Sandra and Malcolm Berman Brain and Spine Institute, MedStar National Rehabilitation Network, the CDC, who provides us all the materials that we need. So as we are visiting these high schools and rec centers and boys and girls clubs, even churches, to promote our I Promise campaign, the education they can cover, it's so vital. They go into detail. Dr. Joya has a great PowerPoint presentation that is unlike any other, that can really go into the science aspect of it, what actually takes place during the brains, and he has a bunch of graphs. I mean, sometimes it can be sort of scientifically driven, but it really, hits home. And also I want to say that Miss Sylvia Mackey, the wife of former NFL player John Mackey from Baltimore.
Out of Baltimore.
She's a staunch supporter of our organization. As you know, Mr. Mackey recently died from his battle from a series of traumatic brain injuries and ultimately dementia. So
for anyone who wants more information about the I Promise campaign and your organization, where should they go online?
Oh, they can go to our website. It's www.safio, which is S as in Sam, A as in Apple, F as in Frank, EO.bravehost.com. Bravehost is spelled B-R-A, V as in Victor, E, host, HOST.com.
So it's Safio, SAFEO.bravehost.com.
Or they can call 202-905-3045.
We'll give that phone number out again. Just get ready for a whole bunch of folks calling the phone. Doctor, when you talk to parents whose children have been injured in a sports-related incident, what is the most difficult thing that you find communicating to them about?
It's interesting. What I find is that after the injury occurs, most families are willing to listen because of the effects on their kids' lives, not just in sports but academically. The tough message is for families where the injury hasn't happened because it won't happen to my kid or I can't identify with it. And that's been part of the issue here. It's also why it's great to have parents who have been through it talking to other parents to say, as you mentioned there, Daryl, it only takes one play, one hit to produce this injury. So we really try to get that point across. The other thing is just trying to prepare a parent. So Coach mentioned the CDC materials that we've been developing over the years, all the fact sheets, the videos that are available. We actually built a smartphone app that actually takes that information so that it's available to the coaches, to the parents, where we're preparing them should the incident occur, because we don't often think it's going to occur. Families after the injury, quite honestly, they are concerned about getting back on the field, but because of all the media attention now, they're worried downstream in terms of what might happen long term to their kids. So there's a much greater awareness out there, and I think a much greater concern.
How do you know when you have a concussion and someone is recovering from a concussion that, barring any severe symptoms or repercussions, that maybe it's not a good idea for the student athlete to get back on the field or back on the gymnastics squad or what have you?
Well, we now have medical exams that include not just symptom assessments, not just asking the kid how they're feeling, but also giving sophisticated cognitive testing. We do balance testing. We do other kinds of neurologic exams now that really tell us if that brain has recovered yet. We also then put them through a set of steps before they go back out and actually take those forces again and monitor their progress throughout. So there's the protocols, the procedures we use now are really just happening over the last 5 to 10 years. They weren't there in any of the sports prior to that. So we now have some pretty systematic ways of both examining whether you're recovered and making sure you're ready to go back out on the field.
Daryl, calling from Baltimore. Daryl, thanks for calling. What's on your mind? Daryl, are you there? Okay, let's go to Mark. Mark, calling from Silver Spring, Maryland. Mark, what's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing? This is perfect. I'm a basketball player, so I've suffered concussions, been undercut, high school, college, and semi-pro. So, and I just suffered one last year that was pretty nasty. So when you say educate the kids, try to tell them, you got to get this concussion test. At least this gives you a baseline of where, where you are right now. So just in case if something were to happen, and to give you, they retest you, that's part of the recovery phase. It didn't hit my kids until they saw me laid up 4 days in the bed. Now, mind you, I was 48. I'm 48, but, still, it was pretty nasty with the symptoms I had. And
what were your symptoms, Mark?
oh my gosh, it was. I mean, first of all, I couldn't walk up the steps. I kept blacking. When I was going to the hospital, I was blacking in and out. By the time when I got home, it hurt to even take a bath or shower. When I laid down, I got in this nasty cold sweat, and my head felt like it was going 100 miles an hour. When I tried to sit up, even at the slowest pace, same thing. It felt like I was in hell.
How do you feel now?
Well, you know, it took me. I'm fine right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine right now, but I would say I'm 95%.
And when did this happen?
This happened last January.
So January of 2010.
2011.
2011. Yeah.
Right.
So.
I couldn't do anything. I couldn't run because it's like the doctor said. You know, you have that. Your brain moves. I couldn't run. I couldn't work out, so I started gaining weight. And I'm not big at all, but I mean, I just felt like I was just wasting away, kind of.
How did you hurt yourself? How did you suffer this injury?
I got hit on the court, and then I hit my head.
So you fell down. You were hit, and then you hit your head.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, I think the point here that the caller is making is that this is not just a football injury. We see it in basketball. We see it in wrestling. We see it in all the other sports, and we need to know that. And those sports need to be prepared as well.
Yeah, and Mark, thank you so much, and I hope that you continue to recover, because doctor, based on what he was explaining to us, that's not just serious. I mean, that sounds severe.
Well, and we see that every day in our clinics, though. We see a wide range of outcomes, kids that are taking months, even up to a year to recover. So he also mentioned this issue of baseline testing, which is, understanding where the youngster's cognitive functioning is before the injury and having that available. That's done in the NFL, the NHL. It's done in a lot of colleges now, some high schools. We work with over 50 youth programs to provide that. It's one piece of information that can be useful then to measure against as the youngster is recovering.
Daryl, and as we wrap up, if you could tell parents or young people your best piece of advice, no matter what sport they may be participating in, what would it be?
Go to an educational seminar and learn about the fundamentals of the game, learn about the possible injuries that can occur in that sport, and learn as much as you can about the coaching staff that you're going to turn your kid over to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you want to make sure that the people that are teaching your children know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Coach Carter, I see you just shaking your head. Yeah.
No, I agree with him, definitely. You definitely want to make sure that you are totally educated on the concerns of the coach, because you are actually, as he said, turning them over. But I want to make a charge to all the athletes in the D.C. metropolitan area that played back when I played, whether you played in the 80s or the 90s. If you are a coach or you're a father that have kids that participate in sports, join the Safio I Promise campaign, and because that's your way of giving back. You have a duty now. You're not playing sports anymore. It's about the young athletes. If you're from the D.C. metropolitan Baltimore area and you have concerns and you want to get involved, join the I Promise campaign and go to our website. If you don't want to participate, you can make a donation. You can volunteer. You can do all sorts of things to help out to get this word out.
And that website is safio.braveheart.
Brave Host.
Brave Host. Got Mel Gibson on the mind. Brave Host. It's SAFEO.BRAVEHOST.com.
Right.
I want to thank all of my guests for coming in and talking about this very important issue. Dr. Joya at Children's National Medical Center, thank you so much. Coach Carter,
welcome.
Thank you. And Daryl Haley, always a pleasure. I learned something about you today, man.
We talk about that off the air.
Boy, I tell you, you are rough and tough. But concussions notwithstanding, I'm glad that you're with us. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. That is the Daily Drum on HUR Voices, Sirius XM 141 for this Tuesday, March 13th. I'm Harold Fisher. You can reach me at hfisher@whur.com, on Facebook or Twitter at hfisherwhur. Now, stay tuned for the Hang Suite with Mark and Troy. Good night.